right there.
That's such a bummer.
No. Yeah, so that one we can pack. That we should put a damn plug over. Yeah, that's fine. And at this point, if you want to, you can have plaster, and it's just something to remember where it is. If we ever want to use it. Just put one of those. Yeah, or yeah. I mean, any of those things, that certainly works.
I'll try again. I love her.
I'll do the lighting where you do the blessing. Yeah, no, it sounds like a good thing. No, for sure.
I love that. Yeah. It's not an accordion, but that's an amazing instrument. It moves my soul. You'll love it. Harmonium. I guess I almost got it right.
10 years, $500 for the town board, the ZBA.
I would try it. I used to go to America.
Yo, $15,000. Close it out and go. You don't understand.
It's destined to go the way of all things, I think. That's kind of it.
I need to get a note from which
Yeah, sure. You know what, as a matter of fact, it's so funny you say that. I went down there today, I was looking for something else entirely, and I spent about 20 minutes in there just looking around. It looks amazing. I'm going to say something, I was actually planning on saying it in any case. That's a great, you know what, that's actually a fabulous idea, right? Is I'll say that so people can go down and check it out. That's a great idea. I love that. Love it, love it.
No, I
I'm going to Saturday night to dinner. I've only been there for dinner one time. We pick up.
We're not walking around.
we're not concerned.
One night a week.
You're front row people.
That was my fault. I did that.
You are welcome to sit anywhere you like. I come from a long tradition of back row sitting people, so I'm always, yes, but I'm always impressed in that way. But I think it suits you well. Front right, it suits you very well. Yeah, there. Every once in a while, that conversation comes up here and is usually quickly defeated. But in many places, actually, it's a very common thing. And I think actually when we were at the Whalers Church, so there for sure, every single pew has its name. To this day, has its name, and several of them, especially in the front few rows, are the names of the same, like all the streets in town, right? The Sages and all those people, the Fays. Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think it's likely to be here. But there are sort of de facto people's seats. No, not that I'm aware of, but it's a very ecumenical place, so you never know. It's always possible. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Oh, I got at least one mumbled Shabbat Shalom back. That was good. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you very much. It's always good to see all of you. It's always good to celebrate Shabbat. Cantor Kevin will be back next week, and actually he will be leading services on his own. Rabbi is taking first non-sick Shabbat off in quite a while, which is very nice. So we're excited to have. I was just going to say I didn't ask for at the Oneg. I will ask for permission to have next week off. No, but we are looking forward to that for you guys. I'm sure he'll do a great job. But this Shabbat, I'm going to rely on all of you to sing with me. Before we get to any of that singing, though, we're going to welcome Rona Klopman back. Right? This is your first Shabbos back since returning. So, well, you haven't forgotten the blessings. That's for sure. We're on page 120. Page 120. And as I promised, Rona, I'm going to light the candles, and you can just. It's exactly right. Now, can you hold this and that? Okay, so let me light first, and then we'll.
It's gonna get there.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to work for in life, I guess.
Get the wax off.
Yeah, that's it. We'll pre-light next time. Okay.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'tzosav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen. Amen. And welcome back, Ron.
Thank you.
So we'll turn now in our Sidurim, in our prayer books, to page 130 to begin Kabbalat Shabbat. Again, if you're joining us for the first time here tonight and you're looking, our prayer book looks just like this. We're on page 130. I hope to hear all of you singing. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, l'Adonai. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, l'Adonai. Naria, naria, letzori shenu, nekad mafana vetodah. Naria, naria, letzori shenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, l'Adonai. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, l'Adonai. We're now on page 131, Shirul Adonai, which is just in the middle of the page. Shirul Adonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shirul Adonai, Kol Haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato. We'll turn now to page 132, or Zarua, which is just at the very bottom of the page. Or Zarua lahatzadik uleishrei lev simcha Or zaru ala tzadik, ulehishre lev simcha. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai, vehodu lezecher kodsho. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai, vehodu lezecher kodsho. We're now on page 134 at the very top of the page. Zamru l'Adonai bechinhor, bechinhor bekol zimra, b'chatzotzrot bekol shofar, ha'ariu lifnei ha'melech Adonai, yiram hayamum lo'o, tebehel ve'yoshvei ba. Neharot yimcha uchaf yachad harim yiraneinu lifnei Adonai kiva lishmot haaretz yishpot tevel betzedek vehamihim b'meisharim Yiram hayamum lo'o, tebehel ve'yoshvei ba. Neharot yimcha uchaf yachad, harim yiraneinu. We're now on page 135, Romamu, which is the last Hebrew paragraph in the middle of the page. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. We'll turn now to page 138 for L'chad Odi. And a reminder, we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs. For the final paragraph, if you're with us here in the room, we'll rise and face towards the entrance. Again, page 138. L'chad Odi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Ishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet v'litila. L'chad Odi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. L'chad Odi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor haberacha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Penei Shabbat nekabela. Fifth paragraph. Hitoreri. Kiva orech kumi uri. Jir daberi. Kevod Adonai alayich nikla. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Penei Shabbat nekabela. Bohi veshalom ateret bala. Gam besimcha uvetzola. Toch emunei am segula. Bohi chala. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Penei Shabbat nekabela. Please be seated. We're now on page 140, Tzadik Katamar, which is just where the Hebrew indents. Again, page 140. Tzadik Katamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yizke shetulim beveit Adonai mechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva deshenim verananim yihu lehagid ki ashar Adonai tzuri velo havlatabo. Turn now to page 144 for the Chatzi Kaddish, and will rise in body or in spirit, and remain standing for the Baruch Hu on the next page. Yitkadal vehitkadash shemei rabba Alma divrach irutei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'galaha ubizman kariv v'imeru amen. Yehesh me'rabba mevarach la'alam li'al me'al maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu leila min kol mirchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damihiran be'alma v'yimeru amen. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. Please be seated. Just as a very quick aside, you may remember for all those really year plus or so where I was davening by myself during COVID, and you never heard the responsive parts. And I've said this before, but when Kevin is here, I don't hear it necessarily the same way. When I'm facing this way and I hear all those voices behind me, it's a big thing for me. Big thing. So, we'll turn to page 148. We'll read together in English at the bottom of the page. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Umavir yom u'evi laila, umavdihil ben yom u've'laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, el chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, ha-mahariv aravim. We'll turn now to page 150, and we'll read together in English at the very bottom of the page. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Ki yehem chayinu ve'orech yaminu, uvahem nege yomam v'layla, v'avatcha tasir mimenu li'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Oheb amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Please join me on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam ve'shiftecha v'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech V'shochbecha uvkumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, vehayu letotafot beinenecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha. Leman tiskeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai, vitem kedoshim leloechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liyot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. Let's read together on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn to page 158 at the very top. Ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye bye bim bam, ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye bye bim bam, ya bye 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 bye, ya bye bye bim bam, ya bye 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 bye, ya bye bye bim bam. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osefele, Nora tehilot osefele, Ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye bye bim bam, ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye bye bim bam, ya bye 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 bye, ya bye bye bim bam, ya bye 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 bye, ya bye bye bim bam. Malachutecha ra'ovanecha, Bokeyam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam zeili anu ve'amru, Adonai himloch leolam va'ed, V'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, Ugolo miad chazak mimenu, Baruch ata Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Ashkivenu is on page 160. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu Shobreinu lechaim. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu Shomreinu lechaim. Ushmor tzeiteinu uvoeinu lechaim u'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu Shomreinu lechaim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Yerushalayim. We'll turn now to page 162 at the very top of the page. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam, ein beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti le'olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashevi'i Shabbat vayinafash. I invite us now to rise in body or spirit as we begin the Amidah together on page 164. From that point on, we will continue silently. As always, please go at your own pace. And when you're finished at the end, if you're still standing, you may be seated. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufiai tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, yase shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yase shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We'll turn now to page 371 as we offer our Misha Berach, our healing prayer for this evening. We'll begin by thinking of those in our community that we know are in need of that healing. Meryl Taradash, Barbara Goldfarb, Abigail Blum, Betsy Tepper, Allison Luckman, Michael Klinghofer, Ame and Warren Cass, Rivka Bat Rachel, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sylvia Devora Bat Francis, Muriel Hirsch, Michelle Sawicki, Francis Kirschman, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Spicer, Barbara Kushner, David Kyle Klotman, Lorraine Davis, Kim Birnbaum, Deborah Block-Kroll, Sylvia Orn, Rachel Bat Ora, Josephine Getling, Lisa Levitin, Kate Sherwood, Peretz Ben Shlomo, and Israel Ben Yitzchak. In addition to those names that we just read, for those that are in the room with us, if you have additional names to share, we'll start on this side of the room from the front to the rear, and then this side of the room, and also invite those at home to share names of your loved ones as well. And if you have names to share, just raise a hand. Let me go ahead.
Audrey Compasky, John Graham, Diane Schwartz, Jane Connolly, Kelly, Frenchie, Maria Kinney, Bill O'Hare, Mario, Felix, Peggy Trickoff, Patricia Kay, Honey R., Lee Judah, Bonnie Lowe, Alan Conley, James Carr, Frank Ryan, Dottie, Ronald, Judy Whitman.
Michael Earls.
Of course, again, I invite those to add names of their loved ones from at home, and we'll join together on page 371, just in the middle of the page. Mishebeirach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishebeirach imotenu mekor habracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Now add our prayer for Israel in time of war. Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, you know that the Jewish people are one nation with one heart, and today that heart is broken. O healer of broken hearts, binder of their wounds, be with our brothers and sisters who have been taken captive, and with the families of the victims. Watch over the hostages, break their bonds, bring them out from darkness to light. Proclaim release to the captives, liberation to the imprisoned. Comfort the families, bring them under the shelter of your wings. Bring complete healing of body and spirit to all the wounded. Bind up our wounds and grant us healing. Tzur Yisrael v'goalo, rock and redeemer of the people Israel. Bless the state of Israel, the initial manifestation of our redemption. Shield it with your care, spread over it your shelter of peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Grace them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend us. Crown their efforts with victory. Bless the land with peace, its inhabitants with lasting joy. Shomer Yisrael, guardian of Israel, strengthen and bless the defenders of Israel who stand guard on the land, in the air, and on the sea. May we see the promise of the psalmist realized. You turn my mourning into dancing, my sackcloth into robes of joy. God, protect, preserve, and restore peace and well-being to Israel, your people, and together we say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So, I'm not going to quiz anybody on last week, but we're going to continue some ideas. I know some weren't with us. We won't hold anybody to account. But just by way of explanation, we're in a section of the Torah, the last few parshas of the book of Exodus, that talk about the building of the Mishkan, building of the tabernacle, the portable sanctuary in the desert that becomes the forerunner of the temple, and then eventually the temple, the forerunner of all the synagogues in the world, including this one where we sit in tonight. And as I talked about last week, we talked about the fact that this congregation's original name was Mishkan Israel, and so Mishkan is at the very center of what we are, even with our name change, right? It's still very much a part of who we are. And the idea of this thing that is built in the desert that is meant to house the essence of God amidst the people. So I talked more about last week that one of the challenges of this section of the Torah is that while I just described the whole thing in grand fashion, if you're to read it line by line, it's not the most exciting stuff you've ever read in your life. A lot of it is, details. Although I know we have several people involved in building things in here, you'd probably all find it much more fascinating. But it's like for most of us, we want to live in the building. We don't necessarily want to know about which nuts went into where, which bolts went into where, and what it's made out of. So what happens a lot of times when we have these kinds of sections of the Torah is we tend to just kind of skip by them. Or at the very least, we look at them sort of like a magic eye picture from the 80s where you relax your eyes and you only see the big stuff and you miss a lot of the little granular things. So we talked about that last week, and I want to continue that idea a little bit further in this week's Parsha, in Parshat Tetzaveh. So there's one added challenge to this section of the Torah, which is not just a question of its mundanity. It's a question of how do we associate with an event that took place, first of all, really long time ago. And it's something that most of us really have no way of even beginning to understand what it is like to be ex-slaves who are freed from slavery, who then exist in the desert and build a magical sanctuary in the middle of the desert. Most of these things, again, feel very, very, very far and very remote. The other problem is that they don't really feel applicable to us individually, right? We're thinking of it sort of on a collective level. How do we associate with this as individuals living all these years later? And the reality is it's not just questions that we're dealing with now. These were questions that the rabbis have been dealing with basically forever. And so one of the things that they do, especially in Midrash, is they take some of this stuff in the Torah, some of these places that are a little bit drier, and they give them all sorts of energy. And they do that through various ways, but Midrash in particular is one of the most exciting because it plays with it in a narrative kind of way. So one of the ways that the rabbis do this, they sort of make an association. And they say the Mishkan is this thing. It's the thing that's described in the Torah. It was a portable sanctuary, but it also exists on a symbolic level. And in symbolic level is applicable in a number of different ways. So one of the first things that the rabbis do, and they love to do this in general, is they'll look at the text to say, Ma domeh, what can this be compared to? So they look at the description of the building of the Mishkan and they say, there's a remarkable symmetry here to the story of creation. Okay, so not the first thing we might necessarily think of, but also not the furthest. Here you're talking about building something, right? Building, creation is really a building story, right? Building the universe out of nothing. That's really what's taking place here, but it's not just that. So I want to give you a couple examples, because to go through the whole thing, we'd be here till next creation. So it says on the first day it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it also says then, right, it stretches out the heavens like a curtain. And regarding the Mishkan, what does it say? And you shall make curtains of goats for a tent over the tabernacle. So in other words, right, in creation, there is a description of building the heavens and the earth and stretching out the heavens like a curtain. And then a description of the building of the Mishkan. What are they describing? Same kind of thing, right? Spreading out a curtain over the Mishkan. On the second day, let there be a firmament. And it mentions division, as it is said, let it divide water from water. This again from Breshit, from Genesis. And regarding the Mishkan, it says, and the veil shall divide for you between the Holy of Holies. Right? So same idea. Now, most of us at this point are probably saying somewhat loose threads, but the rabbis love to play with loose threads, okay? Another example, third day, it mentions water. As it says, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together. And regarding the Mishkan, it says, and you shall make a copper basin with a copper base for washing. In other words, a thing to contain water. So you can imagine it continues on and 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 on, right? Every day of creation, every aspect of the Mishkan, there is a symmetry. So let's say, okay, fascinating, but perhaps not going to change my life very much, okay? It's an interesting aside, but it's not going to grab me. It's not going to change the way I think about things. So much, much later on, and this is probably an earlier midrash, but it comes from a collection around the 11th century that's known as Breshit Rabbati. So it's taking earlier midrash and kind of collecting them all together. And here it argues that actually the Mishkan, the building of the Mishkan, is really symbolic of a human body. The way that it's described of building all these different parts actually has a lot of connections to the way that a human body functions. So what does it say? In the manner that I, or speaking as God, created the world and your body, so you shall make the tabernacle. And whence is this demonstrated? You find that the beams in the tabernacle were set in sockets. The ribs in the body are set with vertebrae, and mountains of the world are set in the earth's foundations. In the tabernacle, the beams were covered in gold. In the body, the ribs are covered with flesh and sinews, which are taut and support the body. And in the world, trees and vegetation are spread throughout. In the tabernacle, the tapestries are covered, and it notes, by the way, that there are similar letters between the word for tapestries and coverings and vegetation. Okay, so tapestries covered from above, and the two sides, skin of the body covers the limbs and both sides of the ribs. And the heaven covers both of earth's sides. In the tabernacle, the partition, the parochet, this thing, by the way, called the parochet, divides us and the ark. Okay, the parochet divided between the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies, just as the liver diaphragm separates the heart and the stomach. What the rabbis knew in the 11th century, by the way, about the body, sometimes it's not entirely accurate. I don't know if this is correct, right? But they're talking about various parts within the system in which things are divided. Without that diaphragm, right, none of us can live. And the sky separates between the waters above and the waters below. So here, again, in rather sort of practical terms, it's trying to say, look, the Mishkan isn't just about a building. It's not even just about building a place for God to reside. And if it's going to be about that, right, if God is instructing it, it's not accidental that it follows a particular kind of structure. And that the way God created the universe, and the way that God created human beings, and the way that God created the Mishkan, that there is a through line between each of these different elements. So here, it may not seem all that significant, but it answers one of our questions at the outset, right? How do we understand some historical event that took place a long time ago, is to say this wasn't a singular event, that it was actually an event tied to other major events that we also were not a part of, and yet we are all fundamentally a part of at the same time. So the Zohar takes this another step further. Those that aren't familiar with the Zohar, Zohar is the main body of Kabbalistic text, mystic text within Judaism. It's the basis of most Kabbalistic study. If you've ever encountered Kabbalah, you will know that it is not my particular cup of tea. It is beyond my sort of simple capacity to understand in many cases. But in this particular section, it really, of course, plays with this idea of the human body and its connection to the physical things that we create and how that ultimately relates to God. So here it says in its commentary on last week's portion, but applicable to this, Rabbi Yossi opens saying, moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains. This is just the verse from the Torah that it's quoting to begin its exegesis. Here is the mystery of union. So now it's going to talk about the idea of the tabernacle, the body, and the idea of a singular entity, right? Now, let's remember, if there's one important thing about our religion at the very beginning, it's what? One God, okay? Right? So the idea of unification is a very, very big idea, certainly in our religion, but in many religions that follow this kind of monotheistic idea. But even in ones that are not monotheistic, the idea of unity is a very important concept in understanding the cosmos and our place in it. So here it says, right, the tabernacle is this thing that's connected to the idea of unity. The perfection of the tabernacle, the perfection of the Mishkan, is made of numerous levels, as it is written that the tabernacle shall be one, which says in Exodus, in order to show that all the limbs of the body of the tabernacle are the secret of one body. Okay, so you can sort of get a sense of where it's going. In a person, there are many limbs. Some higher, some lower, some are internal, others are visible externally. By the way, limbs in this case is not just referring to arms and legs. It's kind of a catch-all term for the rabbis. Okay, but they're all called one body. And the person is considered one person with one unity. And so it is with the tabernacle, that all the limbs are similar to the above. And when they are connected as one, it is, as it's written, the tabernacle shall be one. So he's answering a question about how can something that is described in many parts be considered one thing. So here he uses the example of the human body to carry this idea forward. The precepts of the Torah continues are all parts and limbs in a supernal secret. And when they all connect and become one, they all amount to be one secret. The secret of the tabernacle is that its limbs and organs that all amount to the secret of the human, like the precepts of the Torah. Because the precepts of the Torah, and this is the key, are all in the secret of the human, male and female. So someone who diminishes even one precept in the Torah, it is as though they have diminished the image of the faith altogether. For all the limbs are together in the secret of the human being, and therefore everything amounts to the secret of unity. Now, if your head is swimming a little bit, we're going to get a little bit of more modern commentary to bring it together. This coming from Dr. Shaya Rottenberg, who is in the conservative yeshiva, which is in Jerusalem. It's a conservative movement's seminary in Jerusalem. So he writes as follows, and here he's quoting, "Both the human body and the Mishkan are complex structures composed of many parts. But when they are properly constructed, a unity prevails. And in that unity emerges a higher and more sublime dimension of reality, the human spirit and the presence of God. And thus for the Zohar, the Mishkan, the human being, and the Torah all manifest, quote, the mystery of unity. In this mystery, different, disparate parts join together into a living whole. And in that whole is manifest a higher spiritual dimension of reality." So thank you first for staying with me on this very long and winding way to that ultimate point. Okay, but it's important to understand how we get there. Okay, the symbol of the Mishkan is not just about a building. It's not just about sockets and wood planks and the things that cover over and all of that. It could have been. Our ancestors could have simply said this was a historic event, a historic building, and that's it. But it becomes the forerunner of every sacred space that the Jewish people have built ever since. And in those buildings, all of its component parts, the various pieces, fundamentally come together to create a singular unity. And we ourselves, as community, do the same. So the problem is, we often rely upon the physical to create that sense of cohesion. Okay, we come together in a single building and we feel somehow connected, and that's wonderful. But those are limited ways of thinking. The building itself will not build cohesion amongst us. The unity itself will not be created magically by walking through the door. Unity, in this sense, is created by community, by connecting with each other, by caring about each other, by building something that isn't just about brick and mortar, as beautiful as this brick and mortar may be, but something that fundamentally exists in the heart. The concept we discussed last week of the Mishkan being a place in which God resides amidst us is a recognition of the fact that we are all manifestations of God in the real world. And how we treat each other and how we see each other and how we see ourselves, again, different as we may be, different as the left hand is from the right, that together are still part of the same unity, right? My body, made up of all of its disparate parts, is still me. And even if one of them, God forbid, should cease to be a part of me, the unity of me is still here. We struggle, we are challenged sometimes by external things and internal things. But that sense of unity, that sense that God resides within each and every one of us in the community that we build, is fundamental to who we are. And it's built out of this particular section of the Torah, which again, we oftentimes overlook or rush through. So I implore you, don't rush through this year. Okay, if you're studying your Torah week to week, which I'm sure all of you are, let's make sure we spend a little bit of extra time here and think about what all of the different pieces are and how they all come together. And if that's a bit of a struggle, then perhaps tonight, if you're in the room with us, you can take a little bit of a look around. Perhaps some of the details you might have missed over the years, some of the things that are really special to this space, and use that as a springboard to think a little bit deeper about what this community means to you, what this temple means to you, what being Jewish or being part of the Jewish people means to you. Right now, especially, these are fundamental questions. These are essential questions, and the questions that I hope we are all asking ourselves and each other. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and I'll invite us all to rise as we turn back to our prayer books, page 586 at the very bottom of the page, Aleinu L'Shabbat. Aleinu L'Shabbat L'Adon HaKol, Latet Gdula L'Yotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kegoye Ha'aratzot, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 591. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Now ask those in mourning, those observing yahrzeit, to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. We think first of those who've passed in our community in recent months. Isabel Becker, Bert Bitterman, Julian Busgang, Morty Schwatzky, Deborah Fogarty, Richard Gambino, Gerald Goldsmith, Lita Goldsmith, Dr. Sam Gould, Rita Hertzfeld, Jesse Hirsch, Sean Leibowitz, Samuel Moskowitz, Jeffrey Nagelberg, Barbara Strasser, Fania Verrett, and David Weinstein. We also mark the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Sylvia Birkin, Morris Busgang, Arlene Collins, Muriel Fearman, Ida Goldfarb, David Gross, Saul Klausner, Ida Klitnick, Ken Coopersmith, Harry Koplovich, Elsie Chris, Jake Krotman, Harold Levine, Rose Levine, William Miller, Harry Osofsky, Edna Peak, Lee Harris Pomeroy, Herman Press, Dora Feit Riss, Jenny Rodney, Fanny Rosenthal, Marilyn Rudley, Michael Ruckin, Jeanette Schwartz, Grace Soffer, Max Susser, Joseph Tarlow, Sidney Tobias, and Leonora Yanovich, and Matthew Adam Zimmerman. Is anyone else saying Kaddish for anyone that we did not mention? I'd like to mention their names. I'll invite those watching at home, if you have names of your loved ones, to add as well. And I'll invite the mourners to join with me on page 598. If it is your custom, you may also rise at this time. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach la'alam u'li'almei almaya. V'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, dushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Okay, please be seated and Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So, a couple quick announcements. First is to join us for Oneg Shabbat if you're with us in the room as soon as our service is concluded. Also, a reminder to join us for services tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. You can join us here at the temple or online, and we'll be followed by our Kiddush lunch and Torah study again 12 o'clock tomorrow, again, both here and online as well. Reminder that on Sunday, the Maureen's Haven Homeless Shelter in the Bridgehampton Child Care Center is taking place. We're still looking for volunteers. Sign up was sent out this morning, so if you can help out, we would appreciate it very much. We also want to remind everyone to mark your calendars, Saturday, March 23rd, for our Purim Megillah reading, and then a party, most likely Sunday at 3. We're still settling on a time for the community. Again, that would be March 24th. Also, a heads up, Tuesday, April 23rd, we'll be able to have our first community Seder since COVID, which is very exciting. That's the second night of Passover again. And this, since we have now our wonderful fancy new kitchen, and we are in communication with a wonderful caterer. If you may remember over the summer, we had a meal that was catered, lovely, lovely thing, under my rabbinic observation to make sure everything is kosher lePesach. But this is really going to be an amazing thing. So we're going to send that a save the date, but please just keep that in mind. We're going to have that, and we're really hoping that you'll be able to join us. Just a few reminders of this upcoming week. Monday at 10:30, a virtual Nina Mitzvah, correct? Still virtual? the whole month of March. My class, which had been the Heschel class, we finished our book. We're actually beginning a new book, and I want to open it up to everybody, which I'll send that information. Next week, Linda, is going to be the last one where we have to do it on Monday, and then we're going to start in March with a new time and a new everything, so keep your eyes open for that. But also on Monday, Hebrew School at 3:30, Social Justice virtual meeting at 5:30, and virtual Musar class with Myra at 7 o'clock. And also a reminder that every Sunday at 9:30 is our Lay-Led morning minyan on Zoom, and that link goes out on Thursdays and Fridays as well. So I think those are all of my announcements. Oh, yes, thank you, Janet. So I was just mentioning to Janet as she was walking in to tell me through a lot of hard work that our historic section / library downstairs on the lower level is in its complete form and very much welcoming to everybody to come visit, including tonight. So once we're done with services, Janet very kindly said she'll go run down and help turn the lights on. If you don't know where the downstairs is, it's down the stairs. But if you follow along, Janet will tell you exactly how to get there. And it's full of all sorts of things that, for those that may remember our old social hall downstairs, I don't know whether we had a name for it, but that's what I'll call it. We had a wonderful collection of things from our history, and it's really been meticulously and thoughtfully put back into place down there. So it's a great opportunity, again, speaking about, our community. That's our history. That's our community. That's where it began. And a lot of really wonderful things down there. So, Janet, thank you for all your hard work in putting that together. And what we're going to do is just say, anytime anybody wants, on Friday nights, want to go down and check it out, definitely go enjoy it. We haven't filled in the mikveh yet. The mikveh, I think that mikveh would probably only suffice for like this much of a person's leg at this point. It's been, but you can see it in all of its entirety, and it's a very important part again of our history. And there's a great picture too, and a description of how it was found. Very cool. So anybody again wants to check it out after the service, just find Janet. We'll head down together. So with that, we'll conclude our service. It's funny, I've become so reliant on Cantor Kevin to pick something related to my sermon while I'm singing, and let's see what we've got here. Okay. So I'm gonna just ask an indulging of my own family melody on page 634. So this is at the very top of the page is a very famous zemer. A zemer is a sort of sung piece of our liturgy. Yom Zeh Israel, that this is Israel's day of light and joy, a Shabbat of rest. And so this first line is really where I'll sing, but it's particularly meaningful to me as I learned this melody from my father, from my great-grandfather, all the way down. And I used to sing it to my children as something of a lullaby, and my dog, if I remember correctly, before I had children, just to try to get it to go to sleep. So hopefully it will have a calming effect on all of us, but it's page 634 at the very top. Yom Zeh Israel Ora V'Simcha Ora V'Simcha Shabbat Menucha Yom Zeh Israel Ora V'Simcha Shabbat Menucha. I didn't sing it as loud as that when I was singing as a lullaby, but hopefully you hear a little bit of history, a little bit of family in those words. We'll turn to page 123 now for Kiddush. We'll rise, and again, please join me on the top of page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon inchilanu zikaron lemahaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim kivanu v'charta Ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. Chaim to you. Motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamahotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Please come next door. And again, anybody wants to see downstairs, follow Janet.